Hello, and welcome to Heart, Mind, and Mechanics Business Coaching. Today on my interview, I have Robert Parker, and I'm really excited to have Robert because I've not had a hypnotherapist on an interview yet. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. Robert is a union certified master hypnotist, and I've never even heard of that. So Robert, I'm going to ask you to explain that in just a moment. And he's also the owner of Twin Revens Hypnotherapy and Research, LLC. He strives to help foster healthy change in people's lives through the natural state of hypnosis and lives by his business motto, which is, and this is just beautiful, Robert, to be the light for those of us who cannot see, the guide for those of us who have lost the way, and the peace for those of us who have forgotten. And that's just a wonderful thing to want to be for people. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Well, to get started, I want to ask you how you got into this line of work, because I know you have a really fascinating story.
Yes. So before this, I was working as a chef. That's how I met my partner. I did the whole cook gets with the waitress, the story that's endlessly told over and over again. Uh-huh. And then the pandemic hit. And needless to say, we were both out of a job. And it came to me to figure out something to do for money. And I reached into my random bag of learned skills and started reading tarot cards professionally. And that was very good money. And I started noticing something after a while, which is I was less reading people's fortune, so to speak, and I was more using the archetypes of the tarot cards to reframe people's problems to them and kind of try to help them work through them. And I've genuinely helped some people, and I felt really good about that. And I wanted to know, how do I do this more full time? How do I only do this? And previous to my venture into this, I'd had no experience with hypnosis. I had never been hypnotized, didn't know exactly what it was, didn't even know for a fact it was real. And I was on Facebook one day, and the all-knowing algorithm put a hypnotherapy college in front of me. And it was accredited by the Department of Education. It was a 720-hour post-grad program, which was the most overeducated you can possibly get on hypnotherapy available in this country. Uh-huh. And I figured, why not? I had a call with admissions, and they just told me our 101 is open to the public. Mm-hmm. You just come in. It's a month worth of classes, learn all you can learn. And if you decide you want to continue, you can continue. Well, it was about 2 classes in before I got my mind completely blown and immediately signed up for the rest of the program before the first part was even done. And since then, this is what I've been doing. This is the first time I can honestly say that I love what I do, that I truly know that I'm helping people.
Now, I have to ask you this question, Robert, because I'm sure that there are people listening to this who are going, what? So the leap from chef to reading tarot cards is not an obvious leap. I mean, even for people like me who are a little bit out there. So what on earth made you do that as a first step?
Well, I have a large collection of hobbies and talents and things that I've done. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I ended up being a chef in the first place is because I had just moved to a very small town in Arkansas, and there was not really many employment options. It's pretty much work at a restaurant or work at the Dollar General. And I'm not really the Dollar General type. Respect to people who can, but I can't work retail. And I ended up becoming a chef because one of the many things I had learned how to do along the way is cook. So I did that for a bit, and the tarot card thing is something that I've always kind of done. That has been, I can't even really tell you when I learned how to do that necessarily, just because it's always kind of been a thing that's in my life. And
Okay.
previous to when I did it, I'd never done it professionally before. It had always just been um, for friends or for entertainment or hanging out at a party and reading people's cards, whatever have you. And I had a good reputation for doing it and rapidly got a good reputation on the services that I worked. But yeah, I could see how that's an odd leap. Uh, I've had a lot of strange jobs in my time, and it's interesting because I've had some cool jobs, like jobs that people would view as like, oh, that's the coolest job on earth, and it was good money, but I didn't really like it. And in retrospect, now knowing what I know because of going through the education that I did, I understand why I didn't like it. I understand why that those career paths didn't exactly mesh with me. So it led to a greater understanding of myself.
So are you an intuitive? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. Because I very rarely work with what the cards say, like with the by the book meaning. I I use it as a framework, and then
Mhm.
from there, kind of speak, and it's it always kind of comes out. And to this day, no matter how many hundreds of times I've done good readings, even now when everyone's like, "Hey, that's exactly right. How did you know that?" I'm just like, I don't know. I have no idea.
So the universe has been using you for a long time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. For one reason, one way or another. I'm used to it. It's
So now you've gone into hypnotherapy. So
Mhm.
explain to the people who are watching this what hypnotherapy really is, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding
Mhm.
about what it is and it isn't. So let's get that
Absolutely.
out on the table first.
Well, to describe what hypnotherapy is, you have to first define what hypnosis is. And hypnosis, as as you said, is a natural process. You are in hypnosis 30 minutes before you go to sleep and 30 minutes after you wake up. You are naturally, readably in the elevated theta state of trance.
Mhm.
And I have to emphasize that the notion of trance, the notion of hypnosis, is not a theory. It's not a metaphysical notion. It is a scientific process. It is monitorable. It is reproducible. It is an accepted thing. One of the main things that I base my practice upon is the research that has gone into it, scientific, medical, and psychological. And I'm always very big on sharing that with clients and potential clients. If I will share immediately the research that pertains to whatever you're asking about. And as to what hypnotherapy is using that natural process of hypnosis, which is basically taking down the gatekeeper of your mind. So your subconscious mind can be directly spoken to and given suggestions.
Mhm.
And I use that state to be able to guide your thoughts and guide your behaviors to more positive change because everything, everything about us, from the way we dress, talk, eat, love, everything is subconscious association and learned behavior. And that can work for us and that can work against us. And what I do is I take that learned behavior, those subconscious associations,
Mhm.
and I guide them to the healthier, to the way you want to think more specifically.
So let me ask you some questions, because if people have never been through hypnotherapy, the only thing they know about hypnosis is, watching some guy on stage pretend he's a chicken,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
They may be a little bit concerned about the fact that, the hypnotherapist might be able to get them to do something they don't want to do, or take them into areas where they really don't want to go. So that's you. So how does that actually work?
Well, I can't make you cluck like a chicken. That's a myth.
Well, that's good. I feel
Um,
good about that.
yeah. Uh, unless you want to, like if you have some subconscious desire to, because I cannot hypnotize anyone into doing something they don't want to do. You are fully awake and fully aware, oh, not fully awake, but you're fully aware during hypnosis. If I were to say something to you, you outright rejected, that would actually just cause the whole thing to fall down. And that's part of what I do. It's being able to know what your subconscious is willing to accept and is willing to guide itself to. Um, there's this notion that hypnosis is mind control, and it's actually the exact opposite. It's getting control over your own mind. Once you learn about this process, once you have voluntarily gone there, it becomes easier to understand how you think, why you think the way that you do, how to better guide your thinking to
Mhm.
a more healthier resolution. A good example of this active thought process is I'll make people more aware of their self talk and conversation, just that subconscious association to monitor that. So if you say, "Oh, I suck," or "I don't know how to do this, I'm too dumb," whatever, you catch yourself, because I'm very big on self talk, because your subconscious doesn't have a sense of humor. If your subconscious hears you say that you suck, it takes that as a literal interpretation. Your subconscious is unable to differentiate between fact and fiction. It's the same reason why when you watch a movie and you get into it, you consciously know that you're watching a fiction, yet you feel sad, you feel angry, you sympathize with characters you know aren't real, because your subconscious still reacts, because it has no way of knowing that's real, that's fake. I mean, its language is dreams. Its language is making things up. So your subconscious, when it sees fiction, simply believes you're trying to speak to it. Um,
So
which
this is why, for example, visualizations can be very powerful.
absolutely, it's why affirmations are very powerful as well. Because, like I said, before we go to bed and after we wake, we're
Mhm.
in a hypersuggestible hypnotic state. So those
Right.
positive affirmations, those are literally hypnotic suggestions that you give
Mhm.
yourself when you wake up, before you go to bed, because your subconscious within that window is listening. So what you do in those periods before sleep and when you wake is very, very, very important. The way you let yourself think and what you guide your thoughts towards.
So, Robert, let's do a little bit of contrast so people understand
Yep.
how this works. So, if I'm coaching somebody who has a limiting belief, then I may connect them to source and run them through a meditation, which will bring them in contact with this part of themselves to grow up and then reintegrate. And that's part of light body work.
Mhm.
And so, in your case, how do you handle it?
At that point, I whatever that limiting belief is, um, a good amount of my work would be finding out why that belief exists. What happened that created that thought process? And in the process of finding that answer, I would be giving supporting suggestions, giving them anchors to be able to allow them to live easier in that process, because sometimes it takes a little time to find the true root of why something happens.
Right?
And at that point, once I find the reason for this limiting idea or this behavior, then it really kind of opens up as to what I do. Sometimes I will do work very similar to what you do. Sometimes I will connect them with their inner child and allow them to communicate with that. If it's a traumatic childhood memory that has led to this limiting belief, um, all manner of techniques that can be used
Right.
to change this person's association from "I can't" to "I can," because it's all in that root reason why you're thinking this way, why you believe this way. And once you change their perspective on that, it all falls into place. And oftentimes, go ahead.
Do you have a story that you can tell us? Obviously, not telling us who the client is, but can you give us an example of doing that?
I can give a very rapid example of that. Those listening can actually go to my website and hear.
Okay.
So I did a podcast a few months ago. It was between two clowns and a German spy. That's actually true. The two clowns, the two clowns. One was a Shriner, and one, I forget what the other one was. But hey, guys, if you're listening, they run a podcast on fear. It's called "What the Fear," and every episode they bring someone else with a new fear and bring in a new expert. And I was the expert this time, and the client, subject, whatever you want to call them, so to speak, was a German special forces operative. And because of that, in the interview, his voice is masked and there's not video. But he had a fear of heights, which is strange because this man could face down literal death and hat, yet was paralyzed of heights. And to the point that whenever he leaned over like something tall, he would get disoriented. There would be like a heavy feeling in his head. And through it all stemmed from, he believed, from a jump during his training years, decades and decades ago when he was 17. So what I did is I took him back to that jump to experience what he had experienced. And I saw the fear play out on him. I saw the heaviness in his head start to come in. But in the process of taking him back, he remembered something that he had not really given credit to before, which was the person that jumped before him was this kid who screamed in terror, was absolutely horrified. And it transferred to him. And my goodness. When he realized that this isn't even my fear, this thing that I've been carrying around for decades, it is even mine. It immediately changed everything. I watched the man go hang off a balcony, like within moments of my bringing him back. And this is edited, but it is all there for someone to listen to. And to this day, because I'll check on him periodically, everything's great. There's no fear left. And that's an interesting example of our perspective and the way that we remember things. Right. And that really made me think how many of our emotions that we carry around aren't even ours, don't even belong to us. Like,
that's a really powerful question, because there are a lot of people who are empaths who pick up other people's emotions literally walking down the street. You know, I remember years ago, very long time ago, I actually saw the first psychic I had ever met who was a true psychic. This wasn't like a parlor game. This is how she was born. And the minute I sat down, she said, "You need to protect yourself." And I mean, I was in my early 20s and I'm like, I'm not one of those people. You know, I don't need to protect myself. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. Right. But she was very emphatic. She said, when you go out, before you go out, you must clothe yourself in white light, because you will pick up anything that's going. And of course, she was absolutely right. I was in flat out denial, right? Like a lot of people, like a lot of empaths are. They
usually are at first. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We always think that, you know, there's, you know, I'm not one of those people, but she was absolutely right. And it is a horror show if you are very sensitive, like this fellow picking up that particular emotion that had nothing to do with him.
And it's interesting because since that time of doing that, everything's come back. Like all of these memories that he had previously, because of his training, pushed back, they're coming back. And I don't know what's going on with that. I extended my offer to help him process that, but I'm still waiting to hear from him. But it's getting in touch with this part of you,
Right.
with this, because it's your subconscious is this massive part of your mind that most people don't know how to interact with or don't acknowledge even. And
Hmm.
once you tap into that, once you begin experiencing healing and therapy from that end, I feel like it opens up something. Like your subconscious wakes up and it's like, oh, we're talking now? Okay. And begins to kind of bring things forward. Most of my clients, we aren't working on the thing right now that they came in for because we've already gone and dealt with that. They're
Hmm.
just now they've moved on to, okay, well, if I can fix this part of my life, if I can change my thinking and behavior to do this, why not just start applying this to every part of my life in any way that I want to be, I can be. And that's that's really awesome to me. Like I've many of my most of my clients actually are very long term that I get to go with them on this journey and get to see this transformation. And it doesn't take long. It's once you have made the commitment that you want change and you are going to do this thing about it, it's when you utilize hypnotherapy as your method to get there, the change is very fast. I'm not
Right.
guaranteeing results, mind you, because everyone's different.
Hmm.
But like I said with that man, I've this lifelong fear of heights is gone in 20 minutes. That's all the time that it took for me to trance him on the spot, walk him through that, and take him out. 20 minutes for something that 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah.
So results not guaranteed, but still, you will see progress. And that's because people always ask, how long does it take? How many sessions does it take? And I can't really answer that question. But what I can say is you'll know progress. You will
Mhm.
see forward progress. This isn't going to be, I love talk therapy. It's great. It's fantastic. But you don't really see a lot of progress with that.
Right.
It's a very long-term thing.
Mhm.
Hypnosis is the opposite. Between your first session and your second or third, you will
Mhm.
know a change. You will notice things different.
Well, and the interesting thing is once you change something,
Mhm.
you'll notice it not only in the area you thought that it was lodged in, but also in other parts of your
All sorts
life.
of absolutely. And that's why it's so important that I get to the root
Mhm.
because this one single problem that some people think may not be a big deal. It's
Mhm.
this huge branching path of all of these other issues that all come down to this one little thing. And so
Mhm.
you're right. That's common. People will come in for this one thing. We'll fix the root issue. We'll address the root issue. And then all of these other improvements start happening in their life that they didn't even realize, all tied back to this one thing. So you're absolutely true.
So, Robert, I have to ask you because of the bent of this particular channel. Um,
Absolutely.
is your hypnotherapy also tied to laws of the universe? How
Oh, absolutely.
how source works? Explain to me how that works so people can understand what the relationship is.
So, oh God, where do you even start on this? So, the part of you that I work with, subconscious, I believe is the part of you that is connected to something more, something more than just this shell here. And in working with that, we are able to connect with a great deal, many things. One of the interesting things that I didn't know, surprisingly enough, before I started, you're familiar with Edgar Casey, correct? Of
Mhm.
course.
Yes.
He used a hypnotist to access the records. And since then, I've helped some of my clients as like a reward. One of the things I like to do is if you come to me for like smoking cessation or weight loss, once
Mhm.
you reach your goal or we do the thing that we've done, I like to give the next session as a reward. We'll go on a journey of some kind. And oftentimes, depending on who the client is, that journey is accessing the Akashic records. And I've had people bring back fascinating things, guardians, like
Mhm.
knowledge, all of these amazing things. Because I realized, because Casey always said that what he did was nothing special, that it was something that anyone could do. And I've got the tool to allow that to happen. I have the
Mhm.
specific tool that Casey used to access those records. And to me, this, what I do is almost proof to me of this existence of a system that is something more. Uh, I kind of acknowledge this idea of all of these things that we acknowledge as like psychic phenomenon and the supernatural or paranormal is just expressions of the quantum state. It's expressions of a math that we haven't learned yet and a reality we don't yet know exists. Um, but we are making that progress. One of the men that I hold in the highest esteem, Dr. Dean Radin, who heads the Institute of Noetic Sciences,
Mhm.
he's one of the ones doing this consciousness research. And one of my personal goals professionally is to be able to do work with the institute, because what what is considered magic today is going to be the science of tomorrow,
Of
because
course.
that's always how it is.
Yep.
Go back, go back to like 1500 and explain this to somebody, and don't burn. Like it's explain how you have a magic black mirror powered by crystals that gives you all of the knowledge of mankind, and that's not magic. Explain that to them, please. And
Yes.
that's the same thing. What is radio but magic? What
Mhm.
is all of these things but what we would previously consider magic? Alchemy turned into chemistry.
Mhm.
These ideas, they aren't, people consider them far-fetched and strange, yet hypnosis was considered a mystical state for many years. Now I can hook you up to several biofeedback machines and show you exactly what
Right.
hypnosis is.
Well, that's
And
the interesting thing that I think was David, I believe his name is David Hamilton, in his book, Why Woo Woo Works, that he had said that, woo woo is only woo woo until it becomes true woo when you
mhm,
put the science behind it. So,
absolutely.
so once you've got, you've made that amount of progress that you can say, yeah, there is a scientific backing, then everybody's like, oh, yeah, okay, this is mainstream, which is why
Absolutely.
I love this area so much, because it is changing so fast. Um,
Absolutely.
what we know from quantum physics is changing so fast that 2-3 years down the road, the landscape is going to look totally different in this
Absolutely.
area for how we understand the way the universe works and how we affect it as opposed to it's affecting us.
Absolutely. And we're figuring out such unusual things that were previously considered so fringe. Like we
Mhm.
have tangible evidence of a linked consciousness now. Like we we are so close to answering so many questions. And one of the most unusual and interesting things about my work is I have reproducible results. It is a science what I do. Yet what am I working with? What even is the conscious and subconscious mind? What is the mind? What are we? Like, and we don't have the answers definitively to those questions. So I'm able to work within this system, but I don't really know what the system is. No one does. Because how? But we're finding out.
We are, in fact, one of the things that is most fascinating for the work that you do and the work that I do is that when you change something for one person, because we are all linked,
Mhm.
it changes it for everybody.
Absolutely.
And one of the greatest things from the emotion code work is that they said when you change something in yourself, you change it for everyone connected to you.
Yes.
Your ancestors, people in the future, your siblings, whatever, everyone around you, that particular issue shifts because of the work that you did. And if you take that a step further to the idea that in the end, we are all one, we are all connected, then any change you make to yourself for the better obviously changes everything in the universe for the better. So it's a big responsibility that you take on when you do this work.
There's an interesting thing, and this was one of the things I learned in school that just absolutely stunned me in its implications. There is a state called synchronous alpha. And what that is it's a method of trance and a way of breathing. And first what happens is your heartbeat, as it shows up on a heart rate monitor, how it normally is a jagged like pattern. It turns into a sine pattern. It gets rounded. It actually starts to smooth out. And then from there, it begins to synchronize with the alpha waves in your brain, which are basically the waves in your brain that cause relaxation and calm. And then more than that, this is going to sound weird, but I saw this on machines. Synchronous alpha is when that synchronized heart and brain wave transmits to everyone within 15 feet of you.
Right.
And their heart and brain waves begin to sync up to yours.
Right.
So it is the literal scientific evidence of good vibes.
Right. That whole science around entrainment just is fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
and people don't realize there is science behind this.
Yes.
There is very difficult to question, very clear science.
You may remember that, 10 years ago, when people were talking about heart math, everybody was kind of looking at them sideways, like, who are you and what happened to my friend?
Is a huge thing.
Absolutely. Because they've done so much research and they've got so much science behind what they do to show people what happens. It is huge.
Synchronous alpha is actually, I think, part of heart math. I think that was one of the things that hypnotherapy kind of borrowed from that.
Right. Well, Robert, this has been absolutely delightful speaking with you. And we're going to put down for people how to get hold of you. So we'll send them to your website, but also if they would like to get in touch with you to schedule a session, how do they do that? Do they do that on your website or elsewhere?
My website is my best way. It's www.twinravens.org. And one of the things I am letting be known at this point is and contact me through my website or send me an email at jrobertparker@protonmail.com. I have a meetup group that I'm starting the middle of next month that's going to start doing bi-monthly group hypnosis sessions for general relaxation. It's obviously not the same as one-on-one, but I've seen a lot of benefit from group work. It is free to anyone who wants to join. Bring yourself, bring anyone you know. And just get a hold of me and I'll shoot you the sign up link for that. And I'd love to see anyone that wants to come join me and experience hypnosis to be there.
Okay, perfect. So you heard it on this channel. Go sign up and see what Robert can do for you. Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for being my guest. This is a fascinating area. And I'm sure that as time goes on, we'll hear a lot more about the work that you're doing.
I hope so. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, you take care, Robert. Bye-bye. And thanks everyone for watching. As Robert said, he does have these sessions coming up, so take advantage of them now, get signed up and see what he can do to help de-stress you. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.